How are you all doing? Ole Gunnar Solskjaer with a big gamble, but yet again showing that he will do things his way at Manchester United. And we don't expect everything to be right, Phil Jones, but he certainly is a man who's going to do it his way no matter how long he is at Manchester United. But first of all, let's start off with a big fat positive and say that well done to Ole. Manager of the Month, as many of us predicted, the first Manchester United manager to win Manager of the Month since Sir Alex Ferguson all those years ago, and he's done it in his first month in charge. I think that deserves a big like and a thumbs up from everybody. And also, we did the double because Marcus Rashford won Player of the Month as well. So a really good positive thing there. What's Solskjaer's gamble? We'll be talking about that. We've got developments around De Gea and a few other Manchester United players, and also the centre-back situation has taken a twist in the last few hours. But let's talk about Ole's gamble first of all. So, some of you may have seen this, some of you may not have seen this, but I just want to say shout out to Drawty for the studio as well. It is rocking. It's absolutely amazing, isn't it? He is a genius and it looks fantastic. And you know what? It's nice to have a studio that befits the brilliance of the presenter, and I think he gets that down perfectly every time. So make sure you smash a like on that. But what I wanted to say is that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the team for Fulham, there is a gamble element to this, and I don't know what you lot think, but well, the reality is Lindelof's not travelled because Lindelof has played every game since Ole's been in charge. So Lindelof is having a rest with eyes on the PSG game. Also, Pereira's not travelled and Fred has not travelled, which we'll speak about in a moment. But the last time Ole Gunnar Solskjaer made wholesale changes was Burnley, and we dropped 2 points. So it is a gamble, and he's got to be very, very careful. And it's about how you approach the game like this. How do you approach a game like this against Fulham? They're crap for a start. They concede on average over 2 goals a game, as I said on the preview last night. And United, as long as they play Rashford and Pogba and Martial and Lingard, I think, and obviously Herrera, I think they'll win that game anyway. Defensively, all right, we might be a little bit weaker without Lindelof, but I think as long as Herrera and Pogba and Martial and Rashford and Lingard are playing, we'll win this game anyway. So it doesn't bother me too much. We are weakened without Lindelof. It probably means Phil Jones will play. I would imagine we'll see Phil Jones and Eric Bailly playing together. Maybe Chris Smalling, I don't know. I would hope that Eric Bailly plays in this game. But it is a bit of a gamble. But I think what Ole's trying to do here is trying to keep freshness within the squad. I wouldn't have thought he's prioritising PSG. I would have thought he's more thinking Lindelof playing Saturday lunchtime and Tuesday nights a little bit much, and maybe with the Chelsea game in mind as well. But for me, the priority, and Ole said it this morning, is always your next game, and he's got to trust the wider squad. And we spoke about this after the Burnley game. Can he trust the wider squad? And many of us have said, I don't think he can. I think that's why we dropped 2 points against Burnley, because beyond the first 11, you can't trust the wider squad. They will let you down, but he's going to have to. He's going to have to trust the wider squad. And when you look at that wider squad, it's quite interesting. Tahith Chong has travelled with the senior squad. I don't think he'll be getting any game time because I don't think he is actually going to give us anything that we haven't already got. You've already got Sanchez, who can play wide, Mata, who can play wide before he'd even bring Chong on. I think Chong's there to make the numbers up, if I'm honest with you. I think more interesting is who's going to play instead of Lindelof. Will he go with Jones or will he play Smalling and Bailly? I think he'll go with Jones, which may encourage Fulham. And second of all, when you look at the midfield three, okay, you've got Herrera, Pogba and Matic, but he's not taken Fred and he's not taken Pereira. Scott McTominay will be the sub in the midfield areas. Do you think McTominay's good enough? I mean, a lot of people moaning about Phil Jones. McTominay's had a new contract recently. Chris Smalling's had a new contract. Ashley Young's had a new contract. Phil Jones has had a new contract. These are all players that actually, if we weren't having great results, I think people would be moaning a lot more than they are. And people are moaning. But I think the 9 wins and the draw have sort of gone, well, we're not happy that Phil Jones and McTominay are getting contracts, but we're winning on the pitch. I think if the results weren't great, there would be a lot of frustration around that. Because that is 4 players. That is 4 players that, let's be honest with you, do at least divide the fan base. And if you remove those 4 players, you'd replace them, hopefully, with a bit of money and better players. So it's starting to tot up again, isn't it? We're starting to build quite a percentage of our squad with players that probably need to be moved on, i.e. Ashley Young, Phil Jones, Chris Smalling, McTominay. We've still got Valencia. We're probably going to give Mata a new contract. So we've still got quite a high percentage, and I think tomorrow's game is quite symbolic of that. This is the wider squad. Can they step up to the plate? If Matic needs to come off, McTominay comes on, is he good enough for a Premier League midfield in a game like this? We'll find out. So there is an element of gamble there from Ollie, but you've got to respect the fact that he is actually doing what he wants. He wants to do these things. I do respect him for that, because he is. We don't want him to keep anything back. If he thinks Scott McTominay is the best midfielder United have ever had, then play him, because I want to know that mistake before we give you the job. If he thinks Phil Jones, we can build a defence around him, keep playing him, Ollie, because we want to see that come crashing down and you don't get the job. But I don't think Ollie's stupid. I think he's a fantastic manager, but we do need to see everything. We want to see, it's the old saying, isn't it? Warts and all. We want to see the good and the bad of Ollie, so that a proper decision can be made in May. And hopefully the bad won't really exist and it'll all be good and we'll give him the job. But if there are weaknesses to his game, we do need to find it out. And I think everyone would agree with that. It's interesting on Pereira and Fred. I've got no idea why Pereira and Fred are not part of the squad, because we do look weak in the midfield area. I can't see anything about injuries. I think it's more concerning from Fred's point of view. I don't know what you lot think, but he's a £50 million player and he's not even travelling with the squad to play Fulham away, who are shit. Let's be honest. So what's the story there? I think with Pereira, you can moan about Jones and McTominay getting new contracts and Ashley Young. I think Pereira's going to not sign a new contract. And yeah, I think a lot of people will say, well, he cost us a goal against Burnley, but ultimately, Andreas Pereira is a player that we've really just not got the best out of. And yet again, it's the Brazilian curse. I don't know what it is about Manchester United and Brazil, but we don't seem to be... And there's no logic to it, because there are Brazilians in the Premier League who do very, very well at other clubs, but we seem to have this brick wall when it comes to getting a Brazilian to really, really perform consistently. And I think Pereira will go, because he can go in the summer, and if he's not part of matchday squads for Fulham, then it's not looking good, is it? It's not looking good at all. But I'm very surprised to see no Fred and Pereira. They've not really played many games. You can't imagine that they're both injured, but I would maybe be worried that they're just not cutting it, and maybe that's why Ollie is not playing him. I mean, Kaneki says that Fred's probably on a baby break, but I don't think so. Not in the middle of a season when you're a bit... you've got loads of games. I can't see that being the case. It's not like he's put a load of work in the first few months. I don't see that being it. I mean, you're right. You might be right. You could be right. Yeah, thanks, Mushin Ashan. He says, great backdrop. Yeah, please do drop a like on the video. Fantastic work from Drawty as ever. But yes, I think it's going to be a very interesting game tomorrow. I'm very excited about it, because if we get those 3 points in the early kickoff, it puts pressure onto Arsenal and Chelsea, which is what we want to do. And I believe we will have enough tomorrow. I can't see us not having enough. But I do think that it concerns me. It concerns me that one injury to Pogba and we're screwed. One injury to Rashford and we're screwed. I mean, we're well stacked in the attacking positions. I just think in the midfield, we're really lightweight. And if you think one injury to Herrera or Matic or Pogba, and where do you go? Who do you go to? If you can't take Pereira and Fred even to Fulham in the bottom, you go McTominay next for any of those three positions. That is not depth I like. That is like, diving head first and, trying one of your Tom Daly dives and not realising the pool is about as shallow as a puddle. You're going to hurt. It's going to hurt. Pack 376 says Young, Jones, McTominay signing, Valencia next. I don't know whether Valencia will get a new contract, but if he did, I've had a lot of people messaging me today saying they're massively concerned about the amount of deadwood that are actually staying, that we thought that we might move on. I can sort of see that. I mean, there is a positive. De Gea's contract is meant to be very, very, very close, and obviously that's what we spent a lot of January doing, signing a lot of working on these contracts for people. Edward Wood says, thank you to the fans for your appreciation. Keeping the world's best players for the coming years will help me double shareholder returns in no time. That's not the real Ed, but it's sarcasm and it's funny. I mean, look, the situation with Manchester United, just a couple of things I've picked up on today that people have been messaging me about. One of them was this, what I call a myth that's floating around, that, the Phil Jones contract's actually quite a good thing because it means that we'll probably sell him in the summer for a decent fee. I think that's a bit like what we used to get under Van Gaal when Herrera didn't used to get picked, and people would say, oh, he's resting him for the next game, and then the next game he wouldn't get picked, and Fellaini would play, and people would go, oh, he's resting him for the next game. You know, it's that want to believe that everything's okay when it's not. And I don't think you give people 5-year contracts if you're planning to sell them. You don't do that. And to be honest with you, Stuart Pearce on TalkSport today, I don't normally listen to it, but he made a very, very valid point. And his valid point was that if, you know, Phil Jones, he knows him from his time with, I think, England under 21s. He says, you know, Phil's a really good centre-back. He's certainly good enough to play for Manchester United. But when you look at his record over the last 4 or 5 years, he's barely struggled. In fact, I don't have the facts to hand, but I don't think he's ever been fit for half of our games in a season over the last 4 years. And what Stuart Pearce was saying is, you don't give a player like that a 5-year contract. He's 26. He's only going to become more injury prone. For the last 6 years, he's been injury prone. He's missed half the season for the last few years, and you give him a 5-year contract. It's bad. It's a bad contract to give. And he said it's nothing against his ability, which we can decide on whether it's bad about his ability, but he says that's the sort of player you give a 2-year contract to. And you say to someone like Phil Jones, you're only getting 2 years, it's nothing personal, but look at your injury record. We're not going to give you the comfort blanket of a 5-year, sit back, get a few more injuries with no concerns. We want you to stay fit, and we're only going to give you 2 years. And if you think you can get 3 years somewhere else, if you actually think anyone else will buy you, good luck. So I don't get that either. I don't get why we've given him a 5-year contract, because I think if you go to Phil Jones and say, right, you're on 120 grand a week at the moment, we're going to give you 80 grand a week in 2 years. I want at least the same. Who else is going to pay you 120 grand a week? It's 80 grand a week in a 2-year contract. Oh, well, go on then. There's no one queuing up outside the door. Get your agent on the door. Oh, yeah, but York City will give me 10 grand. Off you go then. But I think what we've actually done is gone, you're on 120 grand a week. All right, we're going to give you 150 grand a week for 5 years. We've probably increased his wages and given him a long contract. It's a really weird decision, and it's nothing to do with ability. I would base that on his injury record, like Stuart Pearce said. He shouldn't be getting a 5-year contract, and he shouldn't be getting a pay increase either. He should be getting the same terms for 2 years. So we've been absolutely bent over there. And again, you know, applause to Phil Jones' agent, because they've pulled a blinder there. So forget his ability. I think we've been absolutely done over there. And I don't think we'll be selling Phil Jones. He is a well-liked big part of the squad, apparently. So there you go. It's all about getting on with people rather than ability on the pitch. But what does that mean for the centre-back situation was the second thing. Kamel says the thoughts on De Gea on the verge of a £100 million contract. Well, there's a man who's worth every penny. That's all I can say about that. But the second thing I was going to say is about the centre-back situation, where I was saying, look, you've got Smalling who's just signed a new contract. You've got Jones who's just signed a new contract. You've got Lindelof and Bailly who are better than those two. That's 4 senior centre-backs and Swansea. We're linked to Koulibaly, we're linked to Alderweireld, but how do you justify bringing them in when you've got 4 senior centre-backs? One of those has got to go, or we're not going to sign a centre-back. Now, I spoke to a few people today, and this morning I was like, we're clearly not going to sign a centre-back, because why would Woodward let us sign Koulibaly for 100 million when he's got 4 senior centre-backs? But what I actually think is going to happen is I think we might be signing Koulibaly or Alderweireld, but I think we're going to sell Eric Bailly. We're clearly not selling Jones or Smalling because we've just given him a new contract. We're not going to sell Lindelof. I think we might sell Eric Bailly, and that's a worry for me. But I think that might be what's going to happen. So don't give up on your centre-back dreams yet. Imrano TV, board gave Fellaini contract so they didn't have to give Jose 80 million for a midfielder. Sold him because he chose to leave. Now they gave Jones contract to not give Ollie 80 million, and Jones is never going to want to leave. Yeah, I can see the logic in that. And Mr. Johnson says, I think Ed Woodward is enjoying his power trip. Are these terrible contracts going to affect who wants to come in as a sporting director? Look, all I would ever say about Ed Woodward is that he's a fantastic businessman. He's a fantastic businessman, and that can't be argued. He is a fantastic businessman. Is he a fantastic football man? I don't think so. And to be honest with you, we've had Phil Brown on before, who has spoken about people, close to the club. And there are a lot of rumours around Manchester United that Ed Woodward's ego is out of control, and that he actually thinks he knows better than anybody, but he doesn't have any football knowledge. And maybe that is a problem at United. There clearly is a problem at United. There really is clearly a problem. Some of the contracts we hand out are a joke. Some of the signings we've made are ridiculous. The lack of spending is very, very curious. Somebody's responsible for that. Now, I can't cast aspersions and say that's definitely them. They're the one at fault. But you can certainly have your suspicions. Junior Amusi says there is absolutely no logic in extending contract of Phil Jones. Look, we're not the manager of Manchester United. Maybe Manchester United really wants him to stay. That's their decision to make. I cannot say that I was surprised. I said it last night. I expected it to happen. What does surprise me is how we've been bent over for that deal. 5 years to an injury-prone player who nobody else would want. I can't spell it out any better. If you've got somebody that nobody else wants and they want a new contract, you don't give them a pay rise and a massive new one. You give them the same terms and a couple of years to protect yourself. It's baffling. We're a charity now, apparently. I don't know. Lack of spending, says Lou115. Well, you know what? You can delete your laugh out loud next to it, Lou, because the reality is Manchester United spent net around £50 million last summer. They spent nothing in January. They spent nothing in the January before that. So in the last 3 transfer windows, we're averaging about £20 million, which for a club of our size, which is the richest club in the world, with the biggest revenue in the world, which doesn't come from oil money, it's self-generated money, our spending is abysmal. It's pitiful. £20 million over the last 3 transfer windows. And people who say Alexis Sanchez, we did pay for Alexis Sanchez by giving them Mkhitaryan. So that wasn't a spend anyway. In the summer, we bought Fred, we bought Delot, and we bought Grant, but we got rid of people like Blind. The net spend was about 50 million. And this summer, this January transfer, we've spent nothing. So that's the cold, harsh facts. The last 3 transfer windows, we've spent 20 million in each one of those, if you want to average it out. The summer before, who did we get? Matic and Lukaku, about 100. Did we spend 150 altogether? Probably around that, with Lindelof as well, a little bit under. Our spending's pitiful for what we make. And I know people get jealous and always go laugh out loud, United don't spend much. But the reality is, we could go out and burn in the field £300 million and still have another 300 million to spend if we wanted to. We've got loads of money. We don't spend it. Adrian Gauthier, contract maybe so Woodward can sell him off for more instead of him walking off for free. I highly doubt he's in long-term plans. Well, I've just dispelled that, Adrian. That's your plan. If your plan is to get him on a contract so you can sell him, you don't give him a 5-year contract, because who's got the power in a 5-year contract? Oh, Phil, we gave you that new contract a couple of months ago. We want to sell you now. I'm injured for another year. I'm not going anywhere. You're paying me 120 grand for 5 years. I think I'll sit here. No one's going to give me these wages. And that's the big thing that nobody ever thinks about. Oh, let's sell Lukaku. Oh, let's sell Phil Jones. Oh, let's sell Alexis Sanchez. Oh, let's sell Juan Mata. Who's going to pay the wages? These are players that have consistently performed quite badly for Manchester United. No one's going to pay those wages. So it's all right everyone saying, oh, we're going to sell Phil Jones. He's probably on 120 grand a week. Who's going to give him 120 grand a week? So on top of a transfer fee, are you having a laugh? Seriously, you've got to think these things through. Who's going to pay these people money? Who's going to pay Alexis Sanchez 400 grand a week like we are? No one. China, maybe. No one else. Who's going to pay Lukaku whatever he's on? Probably 200, 250 grand a week. No one. Who's going to pay Phil Jones 120 grand a week? No one. So this myth that we've signed him on a contract so we can sell him, who's going to buy him? And who's going to pay him that wage? I think people don't think things through. Like, yeah, logically, it would be great to think we've got him on a new contract so we can sell him. But who's going to pay money for him and who is going to pay those wages? And you know the answer. It's very, very clear. What else? Rotation, I think, is very important. And I think tomorrow we're going to see some rotation. We may even see Scott McTominay starting in that game because, if Ollie is thinking about resting Lindelof, then surely he's got to be thinking about resting a Matic or a Herrera or a Pogba. But the interesting thing about that is, if he is thinking about doing that, The only player he can play is Scott McTominay because Fred and Pereira haven't travelled. So it is very, very interesting. Joshua Spires says, would you consider Thomas Meunier coming in to replace Ashley Young in the summer? He's constantly getting exploited by clubs. I think Thomas Meunier would be a very, very good signing for Manchester United as a general backup experienced player, especially if you've got Delot, who I think Delot will end up like Luke Shaw. I think he will gradually become our fullback for many years to come. Whether he's ready now or not, I don't think so. And is Ashley Young the right? I mean, what's going to happen with Ashley Young? He's not. You're right. He is being exploited at the highest level every week. We've got him for another year, so we're just going to keep being exploited while we wait for Delot. Or maybe bring Meunier in, who can actually play. I think he can play left back as well. He can certainly play in a number of positions, but predominantly off the right. And he's a very, very good player going forward as well. So I would like that. Ole is just another mouthpiece for Glazers and the Woodward. Underinvestment seen by his enthusiasm for Jones signing a new contract. Fans are lapping up nostalgia of Ole. Should never be considered full time. That's from KJ. That's when I'm reading that out, my stomach was actually dropping there, because I've seen a few people talking about this on social media today, and it's made me feel a bit sad, because I'm like, no, we don't want this. We do want Ole to be our manager, but there's I wouldn't say a lot, but there are a few people, because I'm seeing it more and more, saying, as much as I like Ole, this is a nostalgic trip. It's like giving him the keys to the car, letting him drive it around a little bit. Would you really trust him to drive it around all the time? He's clearly over-enthused with the job because he wants it so much. And is that the right person to be Manchester United manager? Somebody who is so in awe of the job, they take it on any terms. And I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago and this morning. I said, look, Ollie's doing a great job. I personally want him to get the job. I really, really do. But my fear is, and there's nothing to back this up other than fear, he's so desperate to get the job, and Carrick and McKenna are so desperate to work with him, and Mike Phelan's so desperate to be back, that they'll take that job on the terms that Woodward and the Glazers are going to love, because they're going to be like really cheap to do. It's going to be really cheap to do compared to Mourinho, who was on massive amounts of money with a massive contract that they had to pay him off, and he wanted massive amounts of money to spend. I guarantee Ollie will probably do it for nowhere near the money Mourinho did, and he probably won't demand any money. But in the long term, is that going to get us where we want to be? And how long can you live off a nostalgic trip with that squad? Maybe he can work miracles, but if he's going to take the United job, Ollie's got to demand at least 200 million this summer. He's got to, because he can't just take the job on pure enthusiasm. He's got to box clever, because I tell you what, if he goes to Woodward's office and says, I'll keep winning games, and if you give me a 3-year contract and I don't want anything to spend, Woodward will go, there you go, off you go. And that's the danger. And to be honest with you, is it Ollie's fault if he's so enthusiastic he'd do the job with no money to spend? No, it's not. He just wants the job. The real fault and blame lies at the door of the chief executive and the owners, who would willingly take somebody because they don't want to spend money. That's the problem, isn't it? That is the problem. Podcast fan says Phil Jones is on 50,000 a week, total Sportec. Does that change anything for you? I think he's on more than that. I definitely think he's on more than that. I don't think Phil Jones is on 50 grand a week. No way. Not at Manchester United. I mean, Ashley Young's on 120 grand. I very much doubt Phil Jones is on 50 grand a week. Premier League footballer at Manchester United on 50 grand a week. No, I don't believe that. Karim Sabu says, Mark, a rumour that United Director of Football may be an internal appointment. Do you think this is so Woodward can have a yes man to control, to stay involved in transfers? That's a really good question from Karim. I did see that this week, that United may go internal for a Director of Football. Massive mistake, and I would have the same concerns as you, Karim. Let's appoint somebody internal who's going to be massively grateful for being appointed and being hired up, moving up. Oh, thank you, Ed, for moving me up. Oh, yes, of course. Your best Director of Football is an external candidate who comes in with a bit of a backbone. What we don't want is a bunch of lapdog nodding heads, yes people who are just grateful because they've been given a job by the hierarchy. We need people to come in who are brilliant at the job. I think Ollie's, as the manager, is a great example. He's external. I know he's got a nostalgic attachment to Manchester United, but he is external. And, he's doing a good job. I think we've got to go external. God help us if Jones ever faces off against PSG, says the Turbo Warrior 343. You see, I actually think Phil Jones might have a decent game against PSG if he plays. I'd be more worried about Phil Jones like playing tomorrow and messing it up. You know, you never know when the mistakes of Jones are going to happen. The apprentices get £50,000 a week, says Phil Foster. I mean, I don't look at what Manchester United players get. I used to. I'm not really interested. I know they get a lot of money, but I'd be very surprised if a United sort of player, England international as well. He did go to the World Cup. He'd be on more than 50 grand a week, I would have thought. Would you still want Ollie if you didn't want to work with the director of football, says JW3209. Look, the director of football is needed at United. I'll be honest with you, it's not something that I do think we need one, but it's not a be all and end all for me. We haven't had one. I don't know why we've not got one now. We seem to be doing a lot of things without one. We're giving out contracts. I mean, you're sort of diminishing the director of football's job, whoever it's going to be, with every new contract you hand out. I mean, he's going to walk in the door, and we've given McTominay one, Jones one, Young one, Smalling one. Probably have Mata and De Gea who have one. That's a lot of, that's 6-7 players. Martial, that's 7 players. You normally only have a squad of about 22. So 30% of your squad is sorted without all the players that are already well into their contracts. So I don't know what's going on with the director of football. My concern is that Ed Woodward's got such a power trip that he doesn't really want the director of football because he loves doing the football side of things. I'd love to know, really, the truth, rather than rumour, what Ed Woodward is like, involvement-wise, in the football side of things. Because I've always given him the benefit of the doubt. Like, my joke was, people were like, oh, Ed Woodward signed Fred, not Mourinho. Because it would have to be Woodward if it wasn't Mourinho, because there is nobody above Mourinho when he was there at United with football knowledge. So, but I used to say, well, yeah, Ed Woodward wouldn't know where Shakhtar Donetsk is. He probably thinks it's a brand of talc or something like that. But what if he really is involved in the football side of things? And that's scary, because you, as football fans of Manchester United, will have a better footballing knowledge than Ed Woodward. He's not the sort of bloke who's been watching football week in, week out all his life. He certainly wouldn't be playing Football Manager or FIFA. So his knowledge of the wider world of football would be very, very concerning. But who knows what the truth is. Ed Woodward says, don't listen to Mark, people. I am the most competent and devoted chairman in football. Haters are jealous of how much I've sacrificed for our club. Go on, Ed. Go on, you tell him. Ruth Myers says, Mark, is it true that Lukaku is starting tomorrow? Let's not try and bring the mood too much down. We've had to deal with Phil Jones' new contract today. But you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if Lukaku does start tomorrow, because I think Ollie thinks he can rotate that squad and win games. It's how many changes he makes. I think the issue with Burnley is he made 4 changes, didn't he? Was it Lukaku, Mata, Pereira and Jones? It was too many. And it was too many. He should have made 2 changes, not 4. Tomorrow, away to Fulham, I think he can make 2 changes. And if he wants to, obviously Lindelof's not going to play, so that's 1 change. He's got 1 other change he can make. Don't make 3 changes. I think it's 1 too many. If you make 4, it's too many. So he could make 2 changes tomorrow. He's either going to have to do it in the midfield or in the front 3. You can't play Sanchez and Lukaku. You can't change your midfield too much. So, yeah, if the rumours that Lukaku's going to start tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if Lukaku starts tomorrow. I mean, I don't rate Lukaku. A lot of you don't rate Lukaku, but he is one of the best paid players in the league. He does score goals against these sort of teams. It's the sort of game I can see Lukaku starting, actually. I'd never really thought about it, but yeah, I can see Lukaku starting tomorrow. Because, again, if you can't play Lukaku against Fulham, when can you play him? And you can't not play him for the rest of the season, because he's too much of an asset to Manchester United. Some people would say take the ET off, and that's what he is. But he is too much of an asset for Manchester United, and they may have... I mean, going back to Football Manager and stuff, the reason they have things in the contract, like, or on FIFA, when you're buying players and it's like, what's my role going to be? First team player, squad player, important first team player, crucial first team player. These things are in those games because in real life these things happen. A contract isn't just sign on the dotted line, there it is. There'll be reassurances about how many games you're going to start. There'll be all sorts. Lukaku will have a contract that pretty much demands that he's got to play first team football. Now, I don't believe there's a contract in world football that demands that you've got to play every game. Maybe someone like Messi has it, I don't know. But I think there will be expectations and promises within Lukaku's contract because of how much we paid for him. And I don't think anybody, when they signed Lukaku, expected him to be the sort of player he's become recently. I think the same with Sanchez as well. I think Sanchez will start games weirdly that we're not expecting because I think there is an expectation that they play games. Chris Plateau, Sanchez as a right winger if he plays and Jones as a backup CDM and Bay and Lindelof as perfect as is, says K Plateau. Interesting. Rashford is our number 9, says Gabriel Medina. Well, maybe Rashford will be kept back as a sub and keep him fresh for PSG. It looks to me, with Lindelof being rested, I want to ask you like this one. With Lindelof being rested, it looks to me like that Ollie is taking that PSG game very, very seriously. And I think that's exciting. To me, I'm going to be totally honest with you, I don't think we've got a cat in hell's chance of winning the Champions League. And I wouldn't be so prioritising it. I would obviously go for it and give it everything you've got, but I wouldn't be looking at it with, I'm going to rest players for it. I'd just be like, I'm going to beat Fulham and then we'll see how we feel about PSG. I don't think we can win the Champions League, and I'm not of the mind that we should prioritise it. I know some of you are, but the reason I'm not prioritising the Champions League is because I don't think the squad's good enough to win it. And also, I think it's, look at Liverpool last year. They went all the way to the final and lost it. You can have a really good run and still not get it. And even if we beat PSG, that's 2 games to beat them. Then you've got a 2-game quarter-final. Then you've got a 2-game semi-final. And then you've got a final. So even if you beat PSG, you still got to win another 5 games effectively. And I want us to do well in it. I think we can do well in it. But I would hate to drop points tomorrow because we've left players out for that, if that makes sense. But everyone's going to have a different opinion. That's the beauty of football. We won't win it, but why not try, says Peter Egan. Exactly, that's your opinion. But the problem I would say to that, Peter, is trying's really important, but is this squad good enough to try on 3 levels? Have we got a squad big enough to go for the Champions League, the FA Cup and the Premier League? And you know what? The blunt answer is no, we haven't. Fatigue will start to kill us in March and April. It will. If we're still in all 3 trophies, it will kill us. Because you will be playing midweek, weekend for all through March and April. We ain't got the squad for that. You can't expect Pogba to play like he's playing at the moment, week in, week out, midweek in, weekend. It won't work. So that's my concern. And I can't be a hypocrite and say, look, Chelsea and Arsenal, their league form's going to suffer because of the Europa League. It will do. If they stay in that, it's going to suffer. We will suffer from the same thing as well. So I will keep saying this, and I know it's a little bit fly in the ointment or party pooper, but I've said this for a few weeks now. I'm worried about that squad. I think beyond our first 11, it's not reliable. Rashford or Martial get injured, you've got to rely on Sanchez or Lukaku. Pogba or Herrera gets injured, you've got to rely on McTominay or Fred. Lindelof or Bay gets injured, you've got to rely on Smalling and Jones. It doesn't take much for us to have our season in the hands of players that have let us down in the past, and that's what worries me. If everybody stays fully fit and firing to go, I think we could win all 3. Why not? But when does that happen? Simon Hayalden says, hi Mark, when I look at the squad, I'm concerned about the lack of depth and quality for our backups. Your thoughts? As if by magic, I've just answered it, mate. So thanks for the contribution. And the Turbo Warrior 343 says, Ollie's modesty and easygoing attitude reflects positivity on everyone. We should trust him to manage full time. Even Paul, who has a big ego, gets it. I think that the players 100% want Ollie. I do. And why wouldn't they? If United rest players, they will be on fire against PSG with them players light, says Eamon Cahill. What I would say to that is, Eamon, how many players would you rest against Fulham? You know, we rested 4 against Burnley and we didn't win. I think if we rest any more than 2, we're risking the points at Fulham tomorrow, which is a massive game for us. I mean, let's not forget. I can't wait for the game tomorrow. I'm so excited, and I'm actually glad it's the Saturday lunchtime kickoff so we get on with it, because if we win tomorrow, Chelsea don't win in City and we're 4th place. And I don't want to be in a position where we draw tomorrow, or even worse, because we've rested too many players. I think get the points on the board, because to be honest with you, I think 2 months ago, the Champions League was our only chance of getting back in it. We, under Mourinho, I think we would have had to win the Champions League to get back in it. Actually, where we are now, our easiest route back into the Champions League is the league, finishing in the top 4. And it's amazing, and it's great how it's turned around. Ollie has preached that United challenges for everything and must go for it, especially given this is his first Champions League game at home. We've got to get... that's a good point there from AJ Malone. We've got to get a result at Old Trafford as well. It's a 2-legged game. We've got to have a lot of energy against PSG at home. I don't think it's impossible for us to go to Paris and win, but when you look at the contrast between PSG at Anfield and PSG when they entertained them in Paris... PSG at Anfield could have lost that game 4-0. They were absolutely run ragged. When it went back to Paris, they did the same thing to Liverpool. So there's the warning. And maybe that's what Ollie's looking at. We need a result at Old Trafford on Tuesday. We need high energy against them. So we will see changes tomorrow. The more I think about it, the more I think we're going to see changes. But as we've seen against Burnley, if you make too many changes with this squad, can you trust the backup players? Can you trust Mata and Lukaku and Jones and McTominay? Can you? It's a rhetorical question. I hope we can, because it would be great. There's nothing more I would like than to not play Martial, Rashford, Pogba tomorrow and have them fresh to go on Tuesday. That would be great. But it's whether you can risk that against Fulham, if you know what I mean. Please do drop a like on the video, everybody. Drawty says wrong chair. That's the one that was in the file with the 2. It was. My only concern with Ollie is his inexperience. There's no pity. And Chong in tomorrow, says Paul David. I very much doubt we'll see Chong tomorrow, because where would Chong's not going to get on ahead of Sanchez or Lukaku or Mata. So I don't think we'll see Chong. I don't think he'll even make the bench. I'd like to, but I just don't think he's going to have the right position to do it. Anyway, remember tomorrow we have got the watch along. We'll be live at 11:30. I believe the kickoff is 12:30 tomorrow. So 11:30 tomorrow. Flex will be down there doing the fan cams as well. So big day for Manchester United tomorrow. Big weekend, hopefully. 2 big games coming up as well with PSG on Tuesday. It's fast, it's furious now. We've got 3 big games coming up. 4 with Liverpool after that. So loads. Vish Hal Orson says, I completely agree. I think league to me is more important than the Champions League right now. Ollie was brought in to save the season and we need to stick to that because of the squad depth we have. Well, let's all wait and see. Can't wait for it. Please do drop a 1 like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new, bottom right hand corner. I think the video deserves a like for the fantastic graphics. There were no drawties in the live comments as well. So we would appreciate your love. I'm going to go and play with my balls. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the morning for the watch along. Oh, we've got a couple of live comments actually. Imrano TV. Ollie was at the PSG game recently when they lost against Lyon. He wants to make his mark on the Champions League and show he is capable tactically. And Gooberface says we should play Greenwood. Well, of course, there is this myth floating around that United will judge Ollie on whether he beats PSG. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. That's the sort of stupid Glazer decision that they would make. I mean, the PSG knocking PSG out of the cup shouldn't be a decision for Ollie getting the job. Because what if in the next round Barcelona spank us and kick us out and we don't get top 4? Or we lose to PSG but we get top 4. The obvious better achievement is top 4. So the PSG result really shouldn't have any bearing on him getting the job. Because if you lose in the next round, it's irrelevant. Top 4 is more important. Or winning the Champions League, which is a big ask. Thanks everyone for watching. There's balls behind me, Rems. Get with the programme. I'll speak to you all soon. Speak to you in the morning. Massive game. Join us for the watch along.